Thank you all for coming and spending your Sunday afternoon in this manner. My name is Dina Dart. I'm the curator of Native American art and have the great privilege of hosting Native Fashion Now here this summer, a show curated by Karen Kramer at the Peabody Essex Museum. Hopefully you all have had a chance to see it. Have you all had a chance to see it? If you haven't, you must, when you leave this room at 3:30, you must go over and see the exhibition. Over, up. It's fantastic and highlights 74 Native American designers over the last 60 years and represented in over 100 objects. It's dazzling, really amazing, sophisticated fashion. And we have the great privilege of having Jessica Metcalfe here as part of our programming. Jessica is really sort of she wouldn't say this about herself, but she's really the go-to person around Native American fashion right now. She has created, well, let me tell you a little bit about her backing up. She's Turtle Mountain Chippewa, born and raised in North Dakota, and attended Dartmouth College for her undergrad, and then the University of Arizona for her PhD, where she wrote her dissertation on Native American fashion, Native American designs in high fashion, which she's currently revising for publication. She's the founder of a blog and boutique online called Beyond Buckskin, which has provided, finally, a resource for people interested in Native American designs. So not Native American inspired designs, which we can find at any place on any corner, any shopping mall, right? But actually designs that originate from Native American people and that are inspired by their culture and life ways. The interesting and brilliant thing about Jessica's work is that she's not only writing and lecturing about these things, but she's actually created a venue for Native people to sell their art, their fashion. And so she's an activist in her own right. And in this world where so few of us are grappling with these issues, it's really important that there be an application for the things that we're talking about in a scholarly way, right? If we're only writing about and talking about things in a scholarly way, we're only speaking to a handful of people. But in this way, she's doing that work as well as providing a venue for engaging with the public about these issues, and then providing a venue for Native artists to sell their work. So kudos to Jessica Metcalfe for all of the good work that she does, and welcome to Portland. And with no further ado, I will invite her up, Dr. Jessica Metcalfe.
That was an awesome introduction. Thank you so much for that. And thank you to the Portland Art Museum for hosting this exhibit and for having me here. It's an absolute honor. So I think it is fair to say that when we look at Native fashion, we are experiencing an indigenous spring moment. For lack of a better phrase, it's an exciting and rejuvenating creative cultural explosion moment. New artists are constantly emerging while more established designers are reaching greater heights. And I get to witness it firsthand as I meet fresh faces and celebrate great accomplishments with others. But this movement is part of a longer Native American fashion movement. This exhibit, Native Fashion Now, spans 60 years and highlights over 70 designers. The launch of this exhibit was and is a huge moment. Validation comes in many forms and in many ways, and all are important to acknowledge and to celebrate. And to have such an amazing institutions like the Peabody and the Portland Art Museums feature this exhibit focusing solely on Native-made fashion is validating. And yes, I know, that we as Native people shouldn't be looking to outside entities to validate us, and in general, I don't think we do. For the truly enriching, spirit-satisfying validation, we look to our communities for that. A nod from a tribal leader, a write-up in a local newspaper, a message from a teen, a hug from your auntie, or an eagle feather from your dad. Most, if not all, of the artists with whom I work will place community validation over validation from any pop culture or mainstream source. Yet, because we are such a small population, we're a tiny fraction of the US or Canadian populations, garnering broad-reaching recognition is absolutely critical in our basic battle to let the world know that we are still here. And Native Fashion Now does that and does it with style. And the topic of fashion. Let me tell you, it's rife with such delightful comments as, that's not fashion. Fashion isn't art. Fashion is art. Fashion is frivolous. Fashion is just a trend. Fashion is elitist. Fashion is something that we all engage in. Fashion is democratic. Fashion is destructive. Fashion is liberating. Just fill in the blank, and I guarantee you it has been said in an article, book, or blog post. Ooh, we got some tech going on here. Okay. And then add in Native American designers, cultures, art, education, and history to the fashion mix, and now you've got a fantastic book topic, and I should know I wrote about it for my doctoral dissertation. But what is Native American fashion? I always ask people this question, and I get some very interesting responses. Some say it is anything wearable made by a Native American. Others insist that there exists a connection, some sort of connection, either to a place through the use of natural materials, or to traditional practices through chosen techniques, or to family or community-held stories through color choice or designs, or even to history through a touch of culture in accessories. Now, several Native American designers have stepped up in recent decades to promote a contemporary Native American fashion movement, one that is simultaneously looks to the past and to the future for inspiration. These designers seamlessly combine the traditional art theory concepts of their communities with modern materials and silhouettes. Their work is varied. No two designers are doing the same thing. For example, this is designed by Consuelo Pascual, who is Mayan and Navajo, and she looks to her ancestors who were knowledgeable observers of the sky world for inspiration for her collections. Her work is influenced by the blackness of outer space, the glimmer of stars, and the architecture of a fluid spaceship. She works with iridescent fabrics, glittery cotton, shiny black suede cloth, metallic fur, and black-on-black design, and incorporates these unconventional materials with subculture designs into high-end couture, producing sophisticated dresses with a distinctive edge. And Patricia Michaels, who is Taos Pueblo, is known for her participation and successes on the hit reality TV show Project Runway. Michaels says she starts each garment like a blank canvas. And indeed, most of her designs begin with a plain white or black fabric that she hand paints and manipulates, and then transforms into three-dimensional wearable sculptures. About this relationship of her clothing to story, she stated, quote, "Every garment that I make, the fabric, the cut of the garment, tells a story. Some people do it through pottery or painting or jewelry. For me, I just thought, well, somebody can wear it. They can feel these stories on their skin," end quote. Another favorite designer of mine is Virgil Ortiz, and his work transcends time and medium. He creates both traditional Pueblo pottery and fashion-forward clothing. The stark black and creamy white color palette of ancient Cochiti pottery appears in his fashion designs, while the edgy aesthetic of his garments is present, albeit more subtly, in his pottery as well. Since creating his first fashion pieces for his boutique, Heat, in 2002, Ortiz has been a path breaker. Born into a family of potters, he grew up making the clay figures for which the Cochiti Pueblo are known. He made his in the style of 19th century Coche de Munoz. These comical clay figures caricatured the outsiders, from circus performers to missionaries to tourists who traveled through the Pueblo region during the period. Ortiz's pleasure in creating these figures soon found expression in the work of his fabric and fashion, and he began to make clothing inspired by them out of materials like black leather and vinyl. All of his fashion designs, he says, are inspired by Cochiti traditional stories. For example, his graphically bold nature designs that you see here, which represent the snake, wild spinach, water, and other objects with significance for Pueblo life, are new interpretations of ancient symbols. Contemporary artists like Ortiz keep these traditions alive. His latest work is a film that incorporates fashion and pottery. It is a futuristic reimagining of the 1680 Pueblo Revolt as a battle between natives and invading space aliens. This time, the Cochitis succeed in driving out the invaders. His fashion line, Indigene, features his signature hard-edged looks, so leather jackets, bold luxury handbags, and silk scarves depicting figures from this uprising. As an award-winning artist whose work continues to captivate viewers, Ortiz's artistic mission is actually quite simple: to engage Cochiti youth with their own language, culture, artistic practices, and history. Through working with multiple mediums, including fashion, Ortiz hopes to accomplish this task. He explained, quote, "What I do is to continue the link, to pass it on to the next generation and keep it alive." Alano Adzurdza is Taltan and based out of Vancouver. He works in a variety of media, so wood sculpture, painting, jewelry, and fashion. He actually takes his two-dimensional paintings, blows them up and zooms them in, and transfers the designs to fabric that wraps around the body, as you can see in these ones. And his work is distinctively bold and just translates perfectly to streetwear. Another artist is Jared Yazzie, who is Navajo, and much of his work packs a political punch. So by advocating to protect the earth and her ancestors, to celebrate the power of Native women, or to ask people to rethink popular perspectives on history. Native Americans are the ones who discovered Columbus, not the other way around. And then this is a shot from one of his recent photo shoots. He quit his day job and he's pursuing, and I kind of forced him to quit his day job, and he's pursuing fashion full time, and he's really taking off. I'm so excited about what he's doing. There was a video that was put together by Refinery 29, which is a very popular website, about Navajo style, and he is included in this video, and I wanted to share it with you quickly. Oh, the darn volume problem again. Okay, hold on. We know how to solve this. Yeah, we do. I'm sorry, you guys. We fixed it.
Is supposed to be correct and is supposed to be culturally appropriate. The Navajo beliefs and Navajo traditions are very deep-rooted. Design work is supposed to be correct and is supposed to be culturally appropriate. Other people, they'll appropriate something that's not theirs and not know the meaning behind it. They don't have the knowledge and they don't have the rights to even use Navajo designs. I think every design needs a story.
Navajo style is comfort and it's fashion, but it's also, I think, knowing and understanding that you're carrying on a tradition and you're carrying on culture.
It's necessary for us to make sure that it continues, and with that we allow ourselves to play off these different styles in ways that I think are very personal and characteristic of not only our culture, but as us as individuals within this culture.
Yat my name is Jacqueline Russell. I was born and raised on the Navajo Reservation, and I'm a proud Azandane, or Navajo lady. My work focuses on defining, and most importantly, redefining who Native Americans are in these modern times.
Yat my name is Nanaba Beck. I've been making jewelry for the past 20 years alongside my father, who taught me, and he has 40 years of experience. The workspace that you see me in is a studio space that I share with my father. He has a contemporary aesthetic, but when I think about mine, it's a continuation of the idea of what we hold as Navajo traditional jewelry. Fresh, unique, Navajo made.
My name is Jared Yazzie. I run a brand called OXDX Clothing. I think fashion connects with everybody. My stuff makes a statement, and I think natives right now want to make a statement. There's not a lot of time our voice is heard. A t-shirt can speak for us. There's a lot of cultural identity with it. Patterns and colors have meaning, and you're always raised to learn that and to have respect for the earth, respect for how you express yourself.
It's this idea of reciprocity and exchange between these elements that make it really powerful. Navajo style is exciting and innovative and fresh and traditional all at the same time.
Isn't that great? I'm like, wow, yeah. And this was a mainstream media source that wanted to do this film, and I think that they did such an amazing job. And of course, Jacqueline, Nanaba, and Jared are all...
Mr. Kendall, can you spare a second to... I need a favor.
The commercial's going. And they're just so knowledgeable and so eloquent, and so to have that big platform to share their thoughts was really extraordinary. And these artists aren't just coming out of nowhere, they are continuing a legacy. And I like the work of Jamie Akuma, who is Lucendio and Shoshone Bannock, to highlight this continuance. Sorry guys, allergies. Akuma arrived on the art scene at a young age when she won the Best of Show at the Santa Fe Indian Market in 2000 for a soft sculpture doll featuring miniature, historically accurate, traditional regalia and beadwork. These detailed tributes to the past were immaculate, taking months to complete and garnering great demand from collectors. While she created the miniature clothing and regalia, she always considered changing course and designing ready-to-wear fashion and couture garments. But after 15 years of creating the small, soft sculptures, Akuma is now a self-proclaimed fashion artist, and she has shifted her focus over to making wearable art. Her historically inspired beaded accessories remain a central component of her new fashion-forward body of work. Known for her fully beaded designer shoes, her spike-edged parfleche purses, and her plateau-inspired cuffs, Akuma's work is undeniably luxe. She prefers high-end or rare materials, and she never skimps on beading every inch. She explained, quote, "Detail and quality are the two elements I obsess about most," end quote. Her work can be characterized by bold geometric plateau designs that border stylized flowers, birds, or animals, beaded on shoes, bags, and cuffs. She oftentimes incorporates old vintage beads to get a perfect, rich hue that is no longer being produced. One circular bag, that you see here, boasts a fully beaded, huge rose. It is exquisite and captivating, but the long metal spikes that edge the piece seem to echo the reality of thorns. Look, don't touch, for the beauty will defend herself. Pieces like this one let us know that her work isn't just glitz and glamour, and her pieces are also thoughtful and reflective. She can recall each project distinctively. What was going on in her life ends up in her beadwork. It seems contradictory since each piece is so personal, like exposing a page out of her diary. Yet this is her platform for sharing her experiences and perspective. For example, Akuma's beaded Louboutin boots featured in this exhibit are covered with swirling swallow birds made using antique beads. Luxurious, beautiful, and meticulously beaded, the images on these boots visualize her childhood adventures on her grandfather's land. Through her art and fashion, she shares parts of herself, contributing to our understanding of the human experience and bringing beauty and luxury into our lives through carefully beaded thoughts and memories. For her latest fashion designs, Akuma has been digitally printing her original beadwork. which are all inspired by traditional plateau beadwork, to fabric for dresses, leggings, and scarves. So here she serves as this direct bridge from the well-known traditional adornment of the past to the fashion world of the present. Importantly, these designers provide a pathway for future generations. We are constantly inspired by our rich cultural heritages and excited by the opportunity to honor our ancestors while thinking about how we can accurately and appropriately share that heritage with the world. And to drive this point home, I think it's important to also look at the historical or traditional Native clothing and adornment. And this piece is one of my favorite pieces to talk about. It is a Plains men's warrior shirt from the 1800s, and it's significant for many reasons. But on the front, you can see that there are two sides to this shirt. And the left side, you can see that there are these anthropomorphic figures. They have the head, the torso, and then you can see one leg coming down and one foot kicking out. And this design is to represent how many enemies this shirt owner or shirt wearer killed in battle. And they are represented with just one leg because that is to say that this person will no longer walk on this earth, this person is dead. And then on the right side, you'll see that there's these horizontal lines with these inverted triangles. And these are to represent pipes and how many times this shirt wearer carried a pipe into battle. Might sound weird to carry a pipe into battle, but through the pipe that we smoke the sacred tobacco, and through tobacco is how we communicate with the spirit world. A pipe carrier is in charge of the sacred safety of the war party. They were the first to go out into battle, and they were the last to retreat. And a lot of times they carried no weapons with them, only the pipe. So somebody who's carried a pipe into battle this many times is truly a blessed person and extremely brave. So I also, one topic that I frequently talk about, I find myself talking about this a lot, is the Native American headdress. And this is due to pop culture's current intense interest in this beautiful object. And several Native nations still use the sacred headdress in ceremonies and as an important symbol of leadership. So a person cannot simply wear a headdress because you want to. You have to earn the right to wear one through acts of bravery, selflessness, and leadership. Single eagle feathers are gifted to individuals who have accomplished great deeds because eagle is seen as an intermediary between the people, or the humans on earth here, and the great spirit or creator. So when you have done something of note for your community, you are gifted with the feathers of this important bird. Now, people can also give their feathers to someone who they identify as doing something great or as a great leader. And the feathers of many people can be combined to create a headdress that will be presented to that person as a symbol of support. It is also a sign of that chosen leader's obligation to put the community first in decision-making. So every time you wear the headdress, you feel the weight of your community on you. So this is a picture of Sitting Bull, who was a significant Lakota chief of the late 1800s, and he is actually a current symbol of resistance. And he was gifted a war bonnet in this manner. So his floor-length headdress was actually comprised of feathers that had been earned and owned by others who knew that he would fight for the betterment of the tribe and would continue to work for the symbolic value of the feathers. So through the gifting of the feathered headpiece, Sitting Bull was thus elected or chosen as the leader of the community. So for those of us who still engage in these practices, and I was gifted 2 eagle feathers in my lifetime, we know that we must protect and maintain these value systems for our children, especially for those who grow up outside of their native communities and look up to celebrities as role models. These youth have already succumbed to destructive processes of self-stereotyping, where they look to outsiders to define their identities for them. And this leads me to the next section of this presentation on appropriation. Now, despite all of the exciting and interesting things going on in the Native fashion world, the majority of people still think of this field in stereotypical ways. It needs to have fringe, feathers, turquoise, a Navajo rug pattern, or a Plains Indian headdress in order for it to be Indian. These expectations are exacerbated when large clothing companies create mass-produced Native-inspired collections that flood malls, magazines, and runway shows with inaccurate, stereotypical depictions of our indigenous cultures. Now, what is appropriation? I think I want to share the definition that I'm working with when I think of appropriation so that we can kind of get all on the same page. So appropriation, as I understand it, is the taking of intellectual property, traditional knowledge, cultural expressions, or artifacts from someone else's culture without permission or authorization. And this taking is happening on multiple levels. So here on the left is Jeremy Scott's collection for Adidas, in which he essentially ripped off a well-known totem pole made by a well-respected totem pole carver and gave him no credit at all. In the top right, we see Ralph Lauren, who has built his empire off of selling the Native. And here we have him with Oprah, and Oprah has called him the epitome of the American dream. And then I do this website called Beyond Buckskin, and I write on it through the blog. And so I created this list a while ago, is 20 signs you are a Native-inspired hot mess. And this was number 13. She has feathers in some very interesting locations, and I think that you've taken the trend too far. But in 2011, something very interesting happened, and that is that Urban Outfitters got caught. They had labeled around 24 of their items as Navajo. So they were selling the Navajo panty, the Navajo sock, and the Navajo flask. The problem is that these items had nothing to do with Navajo people, and the Navajo Nation has actually trademarked their name. And any unauthorized use of the term Navajo is a violation of basic trademark law. So the Navajo Nation team of lawyers stepped forward. Now, this type of movement to protect cultural legacy and artistic traditions of Native nations is one that is long overdue. For centuries, non-Native people and companies have tapped indigenous knowledge systems, extracting information for the benefit of non-Natives. And rarely, if ever, have these practices of extraction directly benefited Native communities or come back. Furthermore, the profiting off of Native people and our traditions continues to this day, and it manifests itself in forms that perpetuate systems of colonization. And I know that's a big word, colonization, and I really shouldn't be talking about it, but I like the definition by Walter Echohawk, who stated, quote, "The central purpose of colonialism was to provide riches and land for European elites. To that end, a massive one-way transfer of property occurred in most colonies. Now, while property can be understood as including land, resources, and objects," he continued, quote, "the appropriation extended to intellectual property," end quote. So American Indian names, symbols, and art practices have all been part of this one-way transfer of cultural wealth out of indigenous hands. Now, Urban Outfitters has been actively fighting the Navajo Nation's claims, arguing that Navajo is a generic term for a style or design. It's not a people, okay? Thereby making Urban Outfitters' use of the term legally permissible. The company wants a judge to determine and officially declare that it has not infringed upon the tribe's rights, but it also wants the judge to cancel the tribe's numerous federal trademark registrations that cover the word Navajo. So, and this is a recent update, I think it was about a month or two ago. The Navajo Nation has to prove that they are famous enough to have ownership over this trademark. In order to be deemed sufficiently famous in a legal sense, the mark, Navajo, must be, quote, widely recognized by the general consuming public of the United States, end quote, which the judge held is not the case for the Navajo Nation trademarks. So the largest tribe in the United States could not prove that it was famous enough. I'm like all upset. How are we to protect our names, practices, and legacies if this is just a mere popularity contest? We are the minorities of the minorities, which I might add is a result of deliberate and systematic genocidal attacks. And I don't think we should be further punished nor continue to have our identities whittled away by these large companies just because our tribes are not household recognizable brands. We will never win if that's the case. I might be tiny, but I'm fire. And there's more at stake than just a mere court case. And FIT fashion law professor Guillermo Jimenez brings up some major points. The first is that the counterfeiting of Native arts, as well as these knockoff versions sold by brands like Urban Outfitters, has actually driven down the prices of authentic work, and this is at the expense of Native artists. The second is that stereotypes have become completely commonplace in fashion, and this is at the expense of genuine, Native fashion designers who want to get their work out there. Third is that existing laws are completely insufficient for the protection of Indigenous cultural intellectual property rights, and this is at the expense of our cultural heritages. And the last point that he makes is that we really need to push for corporate social responsibility and to strike up genuine partnerships and collaborations between big brands and Native communities and artists. But interestingly or not, Urban Outfitters is not alone, and there's been many, many brands that have engaged in some seriously questionable actions and unethical promotions. One example is Paul Frank Industries. In September of 2012, the company hosted a fashion event that boasted a Native American powwow theme. So this is the flyer for it. Guests were encouraged to dress up like Indians and don fake neon-colored feathered headdresses and carry around tomahawks. They posed as savages on a mini runway while they pretended to either scalp or behead one another. Children were in attendance and participated in these derogatory acts meant to represent Native people. Alcoholic beverages with names such as Rain Dance were served, mocking our sacred ceremonial practices. They enacted outdated racist stereotypes of Native people as savages or less evolved human beings. What is oftentimes ignored is the fact that rights to misrepresent someone else's culture, as in this case, actually directly aids in the destruction of our cultural practices and communities. And as you can imagine, there was a huge public backlash about this event and collection. And I was one of the main voices, along with Adrian Keene, who runs a blog called Native Appropriations, and calling out this brand. And I wrote an open letter to Paul Frank, and this is it: to whom it may concern. Thank you for removing the powwow pictures from your Facebook page. However, the party still happened, and the images are still out there. We want an apology. Since you are profiting off of a caricature of our cultures, a donation to a Native American youth arts program would be fitting to accompany your apology. Furthermore, if you are genuinely interested in Native American design, I suggest you collaborate with Native American designers in the future. Your actions are highly offensive, and it is ridiculous to see this level of racism still occurring in 2012. Sincerely, Jessica. And then something crazy happened. The president emailed me, the president of Paul Frank, not the president of the United States. No, the president, he apologized. He issued a formal statement and reached out to me and my colleague, Adrian Keene, and made a commitment to grow from this mistake. And Adrian and I worked with Paul Frank on a collaboration between the company and 4 Native American designers, and we're pictured here. And this is completely unheard of. This has never happened before, where a company made such a huge mistake, apologized for it, but then also removed all of the items, removed any of the promotional images from that, and then actively worked to make a better path. So they actively reached out and was working with these artists, and the sales from this, this collection went directly to the artists. They didn't take any money from it, and they did all that they could to promote this collab, and it was fantastic. And so I get a lot of questions, because I like to highlight the bad examples of appropriation, but people ask me, okay, what's a good example of appropriation? What is the right way to do it? And if you remember my definition of appropriation, it's the unauthorized taking. So what's a good example of, unauthorized taking or stealing? So the good version would be authorized sharing, I think. And so that's why I advocate for collaborations. That's the big thing. I'm like, let's collaborate. And 2 of my favorite examples are Sikkim and then Valentino. So in 2011, and this is at the same time as the Urban Outfitters case was gaining steam, New York fashion designer Sikkim collaborated with acclaimed Navajo weaver Tanaba Natani to spotlight her weavings and with his garments. And his clothing was all inspired by the work of Pueblo potter Maria Martinez, who was known for her black-on-black pottery and for playing with texture and asymmetrical silhouettes for her pots. And I love the fact that Sikkim partnered with a notable Native artist, and he gives her credit. It's not much, but it is so rare for this to occur. In addition, he clearly states in all of the press and promotional materials that his inspiration for the collection derives from the revolutionary pottery designs of Maria Martinez. So, here you can see, I don't know if I can get my mouse working. On the left, he's got the black on black inspiration going. This middle piece is Tanaba's weaving that he incorporated into his fashion show. And then on the right, you can see a little bit of the playing with the asymmetrical patterns that he was referring to with Maria's work. Now, whereas many non-Native designers use a generic sense of Indianness that pulls from stereotypes, Sikkim was specific and honest and upfront about his inspiration points, and he named them. He took the time to learn about Navajo weaving and Pueblo pottery and to connect with actual people and to share that experience with his circles. It's very powerful to do something like that. Also last year, Valentino looked to Canadian Métis artist Christy Belcourt for their 2016 resort collection. It was beautiful. About the collaboration, Belcourt said that she researched the brand and asked a lot of questions because they approached her. She explained, quote, "I needed to know if they had ever been accused of cultural appropriation, if they had ever had models walk down the runway in feathers or headdresses. I needed to find out what their environmental track record was." Water Song, which is this, you can see her original paintings off to the right. It's called Water Song. And this painting is what they transferred to the textiles for the collection. This painting is all about the sacredness of water and our responsibility to the water and the earth. It would go against everything I believed in to be involved with a company that was abusive to the environment and to the human beings from whom they source the materials, end quote. She also stated, "There's a really big movement of resurgence and reclamation all across the country. It's beautiful to witness and be a part of, to see people practice the ceremonies and put the pieces back together," end quote. And I think her whole approach to the collaboration was absolutely beautiful, and she did an amazing job. But I believe that through working together in collaborations like these, we can learn more about each other as individuals. But we can also advance cross-cultural understanding and appreciation, which then leads to greater respect and honor. Now, as was mentioned in my intro, I don't just talk about this stuff. I also like to have action, things that we can do out of this. And so I came up with a quick list of action items. The first is to learn and share. And this is, I just believe that education is key to tolerance and understanding, and respect is missing from the current cultural appropriation actions. And Adrienne Keene explained, quote, "There is no respect in taking designs or cultural markers from a community, divorcing them from their meaning and context, and selling them for monetary gain," end quote. The second action item is to support the movement, and you could support it by financially backing it by buying Native-made products. And so I created a list, a Buy Native list, so you can go to beyondbuckskin.com, click on Buy Native List link, and this is a list of dozens of Native-owned businesses that are all online. You can just click the button and you go right to their store, and you can have this stuff shipped right to your house. We live in a very extraordinary time. You don't have to go to a powwow. You don't have to go to a reservation. You don't have to know a Native artist in order to support them. You can do it in so many ways. And that's what we do with Beyond Buckskin too, is that we ship worldwide. We have big supporters in Australia, in Switzerland. It's amazing, the global interest in what we're doing. The next action point, the third one, is to encourage collaborations. And you can do this, you know, if just the average person can do this. If you're walking down the street and you see something in a store window that you're like, hey, that looks like a red flag, go inside and ask, you know, where did you get this item? Is it Native made? Do they have any connection to a Native community? And then just encourage them to consider working with Native artists or collaborating with a Native artist. Just kind of get that vibe out there, I think is so critical. And then the last action item is to boycott Urban Outfitters. And I say it kind of jokingly, but also kind of seriously, because this company's really, really bad. They are so unethical. It's not just with what they're doing with the Navajo Nation, where they're trying to strip away their own right to their own name. Not only that, but Urban Outfitters is well known for pissing off a lot of people and getting a lot of people very upset. They will rip off artists, not just Native artists, across the board artists, and sell it off as their own design. You can Google it. The information's, they're a terrible company, and it's so saddening that they are a successful business right now. That shouldn't be the case, because that just really makes us look bad, that that's what we want to support. So please boycott Urban Outfitters. And so just kind of in conclusion, we can start taking an active stance to support Native designers, especially in our own day-to-day wardrobes, and help rekindle the ancient legacy of Native adornment and reverse the assimilation assault of the past. It is now the easiest than it has ever been in the past 100 years, and will probably get easier as we move forward, to buy or acquire clothing, jewelry, and accessories made by Native American fashion designers. Many of these designers are connected to their communities, and they are keenly aware of what sacred symbols and items should not be for sale to outsiders. Instead, they look within themselves and draw inspiration from their backgrounds and experiences. They know how to translate the artistic traditions of their communities to create items that can be appreciated by anyone and everyone. Furthermore, in staying away from stereotypes, they present a new vision and a new version of the Native in fashion. So let's give our Indigenous designers this opportunity. Now, this exhibit captures an important moment in history, which is right now. With around 100 pieces of wearable art made by over 70 different artists, most of whom are still alive and still producing exciting work, we get to see this moment in the form of a large-scale, three-dimensional freeze frame. We get to submerge ourselves in a parallel universe where Native-made fashion reigns supreme. Here, Native-inspired fashion exists, you know, the stuff made by non-Native designers, but it takes a backseat to the whimsical fashion of Patricia Michaels, the classical styles of Dorothy Grant, the otherworldly dresses of Wendy Ponca, and that luxurious feather gown by Shosho Esquiro. In this space, we get to dream. In this space, the elite, the eccentric, and the common folk all wear Native-made fashion, from the bottom of your Louis Vuitton sneakers to the top of your water lily parasol. It's all Native. We don't even see this kind of representation of Native-made fashion in our own reservation communities because assimilation was pretty terrible. Now, thank goodness for powwows, seriously, and thank goodness for the dozens of Native designers who are making it easy for us to share and wear Native-made fashion on a daily basis, to cloak ourselves in story, in meaning, in purpose, and in style. We are still here, and we look fabulous. So let's learn, share, and let's celebrate. So as I mentioned before, please check out beyondbuckskin.com, and you can find that link to buy Native, and just go link happy and buy some really fun stuff. We also have the boutique in which I work with over 40 Native American artists to get their work out to a broader audience, and that's shopbeyondbuckskin.com. I don't know if you guys are on social media, but if you are, we're on everything: Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Pinterest, and Snapchat.